was somehow they were on one of the southern islands in the Philippines during a campaign to take back the Philippines, and they were on a beach, and somebody had caught a pig, and they were having a pig roast on a beach. And I'm going to conflate things, but Uncle Harold actually met my mother's brother Harold. Met my dad in the Philippines when she would get roaringly drunk. I think that's a different story, but it's still the Philippines. And so anyway, while they're having this pig roast, it's not ready yet, but a couple of Japanese Zeros come and strafe the whole beach. Nobody got hurt, but the pig was inedible. The second one is actually shows the more tender side of my dad. So my dad flew C-46s, the C-47s, he dropped paratroopers, and he worked in the Pacific Theater for the, I guess he came home in '44. One of the times when he was dropping, so one of the things about dropping paratroopers back then is they didn't want them to get shot. And it takes about 150 to 175 feet for a parachute to open after you jump out of an airplane. Well, he was flying them in at 200 feet. So basically your chute would open with a pump and your feet would hit the ground almost simultaneously. And a lot of people couldn't walk after this. In any case, one of the flights, there was a kid who was scared and he wouldn't jump. And if you don't jump, it's a court-martial offense. It's like cowardice in the face of the enemy. So my dad got out of the pilot's chair, tried to talk to the kid, talked to him for a long time. He said, I don't care if they throw me in jail, I don't care. He said, they could put you in front of a firing squad, I don't care. I'm not jumping out of this airplane. Anyway, again, long story short, when they got back on the ground, my father wrote a report that this kid was just too sick to jump, and nothing ever happened to him. Which, if you know my dad, that's like hard to believe. Another fact that probably most of you don't know is after the war, my dad was offered a scholarship to Caltech. I don't think my dad knew what Caltech meant. You know, he had a high school education, he was a kid from downtown Philadelphia. But my mother, Marion, said, if you go to Caltech, I'm marrying Joe Gallagher. Some of the kids will know who Joe Gallagher was. But basically, my mom played my dad and this other guy, who I never met, but off against each other for 4 or 5 years, I think. So anyway,
for Joe Gallagher's kids.
my dad didn't take the scholarship, and that's why we're all here. So, I don't know, I think you guys heard today that he fought in, I don't know, he flew, I should say, is a better way of putting it, in 3 wars. World War II he really did fight, but he also flew a little bit in the Korean War, and he flew one airplane over to Saigon in 1968, just before I went into the Air Force Academy. So the biggest thing about World War II is I mean, you probably heard about The Greatest Generation, all this stuff, but it's really a formative experience. And you don't realize, I mean, we should have realized, because all you ever talk about were war stories. But when you're young, it's very hard to imagine something having a really big impact on your life. When you get to be my age, you can look back, and I remember when I was your age, but I don't think the same way I did back then, thank God. I don't know if it was because of my father, but I appreciate him much more now than I did then.
Yes.
So when I was at the academy, the reason I left the Air Force Academy was because they showed us wing camera films of napalm, villages being napalm. It was like the freshmen were all in an auditorium together. Every Saturday, we watched 2 hours of wing camera films, which are ultra slow motion films that are taken from the back of a plane. So you can see the napalm spinning through the air and, you know, clearing, and all of a sudden a big flame, villages would blow up. And I was raised very Catholic, which I am no longer practicing, but I was very seriously Catholic when I was young. And this was sort of just killing people indiscriminately was, to me, something I was taught was a bad thing to do. So I decided I wasn't going to stay at the Air Force Academy. And the night before I made the decision, I had a phone call with my dad, and he said, we had been talking for 3 weeks or something. It took me a long time to decide to quit. And he said, you know what, whatever you do, I'll love you. Which I thought was, wow, that's a load off my mind. Anyway, I came home and he didn't speak to me for a year. So Dennis already talked about Florida. I just want to mention quickly, he left York Narrow Fabrics, a job that he hated. He worked really long hours. There was 6 kids. He kept us all well fed. My mother kept us all well fed by spending all the money that he thought had been set aside. So that was an eternal battle in the family. But when they bought the Bait and Tackle Shop, about 2 years afterwards, my dad was obsessive when he first bought it. Thank you.
It's not water.
So for the first 2 years, my dad did the books every night, and sometimes did them 2 or 3 times a night, worrying about whether they would actually survive this experience. But after 2 years, my mother started complaining about, your father's bothering me. And I had no idea what that was a euphemism for until sometime later. But they had a love affair all over again that started after the pressure was off. Kids were mostly out of the house except for Mary I and Jeff. But I was shocked to see, and Dennis said it, but it was shocking to me that this, from my young eyes, angry asshole who had made my life really painful and difficult could change into a person I couldn't even recognize. Who loved my mother in ways that I'd only ever heard him say, "Yo, Marion, give me this, give me that." And he was famous for Marion. But he became a really gentle, funny, loving person, and it was shocking to me. But it was great too at the same time. And this is before he became Colonel Pop-Pop. He got even better later on. Nobody mentioned Helen McKee, but when my mom and dad moved down, Helen McKee was actually a partner in the business with them for the first couple of years. That's for the York crowd. Nobody else will know who Helen is. But,
We remember the
let me close quickly. So, as I look back on that story I was talking about, I think, my dad's transformation, it's very hard to imagine who you might become. And I think Dennis has it pretty right. My dad was almost 3 different people. I'm kind of going to leave it there, but I think it's something to think about for you young people. When my dad was dying in his last days, it was interesting because he was very happy. He talked, we all were around the bed. He told us some more stories. But at some point, they were going to discharge him, and they gave him the option of going to assisted care or to hospice, and he chose hospice, which he never mentioned dying or anything to any of us. But one of the nicest memories is that the last time I saw him, which was a day or 2 before he died, most of the kids were around the bed, and we were all singing, "Off we go into the wild blue yonder." And he had a big smile on his face, and he died in a way that was really quite beautiful and painless, I think. He was just happy. I never saw him laugh so much as during the last week of his life. And he laughed a lot. Anyway, I want to thank you guys all for coming and sharing this event with us.